I thought the worst day of my life was burying my husband. I was wrong. The worst day was finding out my sister had been sleeping with him for 3 years. It happened at her baby shower, just 2 weeks after Michael's funeral. 2 weeks after I'd stood beside his grave, clutching a handful of dirt, promising him I'd be strong. 2 weeks after our friends and family had wrapped their arms around me, whispering how sorry they were for my loss. I almost didn't go to Jessica's party. The thought of celebrating new life when mine felt so shattered seemed impossible. But she'd begged me over the phone, her voice thick with what I thought was concern for my grief. "Madison, please come," she'd pleaded. "I know it's hard, but you need to get out. Michael would want you to be there for me. Michael would want." Those 3 words had become everyone's favorite weapon against my mourning. Michael would want you to eat. Michael would want you to shower. Michael would want you to pretend everything was fine when your world had collapsed. So I went. I put on my black dress, the same one I'd worn to his funeral, and drove to Jessica's pristine suburban home with its white picket fence and perfectly manicured lawn. The house Michael and I had helped her buy when she was struggling as a single mother. The house where we'd spent countless Sunday dinners, where Michael had taught her son Tyler how to ride a bike in the driveway. The living room was decorated in soft pastels, balloons bobbing against the ceiling like tiny clouds. Women I'd known for years clustered around tables laden with finger sandwiches and pink lemonade, their laughter a sharp contrast to the hollow ache in my chest. They all turned when I walked in, their faces melting into that familiar expression of pity I'd grown to hate. "Oh, Madison." My Aunt Linda rushed over, pulling me into a suffocating hug. "How are you holding up, sweetheart?" Jessica appeared beside me, glowing in a flowing maternity dress, her hand resting on her rounded belly. At 7 months pregnant, she looked radiant in a way I'd never been able to achieve during my own failed pregnancies. Michael and I had tried for years, enduring miscarriage after miscarriage, watching our marriage strain under the weight of our shared disappointment. "Thank you for coming," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "It means everything to me." I nodded, forcing a smile. This was my baby sister, after all. The girl I'd protected from bullies in elementary school, whose tears I'd dried after her first heartbreak, whose hand I'd held when she found out she was pregnant with no father in sight. Whatever bitterness I felt about her happiness in the face of my devastation wasn't fair. The party proceeded as these things do. Games involving guessing baby food flavors and measuring Emma's belly with toilet paper. I participated mechanically, my mind elsewhere, thinking about David's empty side of the bed, his coffee cup still sitting in our sink because I couldn't bring myself to wash it. Then came time for gift opening. Emma settled into her chair, surrounded by pastel packages and expectant faces. She opened onesies and blankets, bottle warmers and tiny shoes, exclaiming over each gift with practiced enthusiasm. The pile dwindled until only one remained, a small, elegantly wrapped box I didn't recognize. Emma's face changed when she saw it. The color drained from her cheeks, and her hands trembled as she reached for it. I wasn't expecting this one." "Well, open it," someone called out, and the room buzzed with anticipation. Emma's fingers worked at the ribbon with unusual hesitance. She lifted the lid, and I watched her face crumple. Inside was a small silver rattle, engraved with something I couldn't see from across the room. "What does it say?" asked our cousin Melissa, craning her neck. Emma looked up, her eyes finding mine across the room. In that moment, I saw something that made my blood freeze. Guilt. Raw, overwhelming guilt. "It says," Emma's voice broke, "From Daddy with love." The room fell silent. A few people shifted uncomfortably, probably assuming it was from Tommy's absent father finally stepping up. But I knew better. I knew that handwriting on the gift tag. I'd seen it on birthday cards and grocery lists and love notes for 15 years. Emma. My voice came out as a whisper, but it cut through the silence like a blade. Where did you get that? She was crying now, her hands wrapped protectively around her belly. Sarah, Where did you get that rattle? The words hung in the air like a live wire. Everyone was staring now, sensing drama but not understanding its source. Emma's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, and I felt the world tilting sideways. He left it for me, she finally whispered. Before he died. He wanted to make sure I had something for the baby. The baby. David's baby. The realization hit me like a physical blow, driving the air from my lungs. I gripped the arm of the couch to keep from falling. How long? The question scraped my throat raw. Sarah, please. How long were you sleeping with my husband? The room erupted in gasps and whispers, but I only heard my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Emma was sobbing now, her mascara creating black rivers down her cheeks. 3 years, she choked out. It started after your last miscarriage. You were so angry all the time, and David was hurting too, and I was just trying to comfort him. But then, I couldn't hear the rest. The room was spinning, faces blurring together as fragments of memory crashed over me. David working late more often. Emma's mysterious boyfriend she never wanted to talk about. The way they'd avoided eye contact at family gatherings. How David had insisted on helping with her doctor appointments, claiming he was just being a good brother-in-law. I thought about the night David died a heart attack at 42, sudden and devastating. I'd been at book club, and Emma had been the one to call 911, the one who'd held his hand in the ambulance. I'd been grateful then, grateful that he hadn't died alone. Now I realized she'd probably been in our bed when it happened. In the bed I'd shared with him for 15 years. You were there, I said, my voice eerily calm, when he died. You were in my house. Emma nodded miserably. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I never meant for it to happen. I loved him, but I knew he loved you too. He was going to tell you about the baby after. After what? After you gave birth? After you'd stolen my husband and had the child I could never give him? I stood up, surprising myself with how steady I felt. The grief that had been consuming me for 2 weeks was transforming into something sharper, more focused. Anger, I realized, was much easier to carry than sorrow. The room was dead silent except for Emma's quiet sobs. 40 pairs of eyes watched as I walked over to her chair and picked up the silver rattle. It was heavy in my palm, solid and real. You know what the cruelest part is? I said, my voice carrying clearly through the hushed room. I was going to ask you to be the baby's godmother. I thought this baby might be my chance to be an aunt since I'd never get to be a mother. I was going to spoil this child rotten, love them like my own. I set the rattle down on the table with a soft clink. But this isn't just my niece or nephew, is it? This is the child my husband chose over our marriage. The family he built while I was grieving our lost babies. Emma reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Sarah, please. I know how this looks, but how it looks. I laughed, a sound devoid of humor. It looks like my sister seduced my grieving husband and got pregnant with the baby I could never carry. It looks like you both lied to me for 3 years, while I blamed myself for our marriage falling apart. I turned to address the room. These women who'd known me since childhood, who'd attended my wedding, who'd brought casseroles after each miscarriage. You all want to know the truth about St. David? The devoted husband everyone thought was so patient with his barren wife? He was screwing my sister for 3 years. This baby she's carrying? It's his. The gasps and whispers rose to a crescendo, but I kept talking, my voice growing stronger with each word. And you know what else? I'm done grieving for him. I've spent 2 weeks crying over a man who betrayed me in the worst possible way. I've mourned a marriage that was already dead. Well, no more. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, but Emma's voice stopped me. Sarah, wait. The baby. They're innocent in this. Please don't punish them for what David and I did. I turned back one last time, looking at my sister, this woman who'd shared my childhood, my secrets, my trust. And finally, my husband. You're right, I said quietly. The baby is innocent, but they're not my responsibility. You made your choice, Emma. You chose him over me, his child over our relationship. Now you get to live with that choice alone. I walked out of that house and didn't look back. Behind me, I could hear the explosion of voices as the gathered women processed what they'd witnessed. By evening, the story would spread through our entire social circle. By tomorrow, everyone would know the truth about David's faithful wife and devoted sister-in-law. I drove home in a strange state of clarity. For the first time in 2 weeks, I wasn't crying. The house that had felt like a mausoleum suddenly felt like mine again. I walked through each room, seeing it with new eyes. In our bedroom, I stripped the bed and threw the sheets in the trash. In his office, I began sorting through papers, finding evidence I'd been too grief-stricken to notice, before hotel receipts, restaurant charges for two, a credit card bill with purchases at a maternity store. The next morning, I called David's lawyer. There would be no inheritance for Emma's baby, no secret trust fund David might have set up. I was his wife, his legal next of kin, and I intended to protect what was mine. I also called a real estate agent. This house held too many lies. I would sell it, take the money, and start somewhere new. Somewhere Emma couldn't find me with tearful apologies and requests for forgiveness. The days that followed were a blur of legal meetings and packing boxes. Emma called constantly, but I never answered. Our mother tried to mediate, begging me to consider forgiveness, but I was done being the understanding older sister. I'd spent my whole life cleaning up Emma's messes, and I refused to clean up this one. 3 months later, I got word that Emma had given birth to a daughter. She named her Grace. Our mother sent photos that I deleted without opening. Some people might call my response cruel, but I call it survival. You see, I learned something important in those weeks after the baby shower. Grief makes you fragile, but betrayal makes you strong. The sister I'd loved my entire life had shown me exactly what our bond was worth. The husband I'd mourned had taught me that some deaths are actually liberations. I moved to Portland, found a job at a nonprofit, and slowly began rebuilding my life. Not the life I'd planned with David, not the life I'd imagined as Emma's beloved sister, but my life. Mine alone. Sometimes people ask if I miss them. The honest answer is complicated. I miss who I thought they were. I miss the illusion of being loved and valued. But I don't miss being lied to. I don't miss being the fool who believed in fairy tales while everyone else was living in reality. Emma still tries to reach me sometimes, especially on holidays. I hear she's struggling as a single mother, that David's sudden death left her with no support system, and a baby she can't afford. Part of me, the part that raised her and protected her, feels a twinge of sympathy. But then I remember that silver rattle, the casual cruelty of announcing her pregnancy at a baby shower just weeks after burying the father. I remember 3 years of lies and the family I'll never have, because my body couldn't do what hers could, and I feel strong again. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be destroyed by other people's choices. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away and build something better. I'm not the same woman who walked into that baby shower drowning in grief. I'm not the devoted wife or the loyal sister I used to be. I'm something new entirely, someone who knows her worth and refuses to accept less. And that, I've discovered, is worth more than any relationship built on lies.